The
Booger That Wouldn't Flick by Alyssa, Maggie, and Dad. One day, Dad, my sister Maggie, and I, my name's Alyssa, were walking through the grocery store. We were going down the cookie aisle with our eyes bugged out and our mouths hung open. Maggie and I were waiting for a cookie to fall off the shelf and into our mouth. Then I looked at Maggie, and she was picking her nose. My mouth quickly closed. "Maggie, gross!" Alyssa screamed. "Dad!" "What?" he asked. Maggie quickly put her finger behind her back just as Dad turned around. "Now, Maggie, I know what you were doing. Don't pick your nose in public. One of these days that bugger's not going to flick. It will stick to your finger and get bigger and bigger." Maggie responded, "Yeah, right, Dad. You're not funny at all." "Think what you want. It's true," said Dad. Maggie did not believe Dad. The next day we were in the hardware store, and I caught Maggie digging away again. I reminded her of what Dad had said. "It's going to stick to your finger and get bigger and bigger," said Alyssa. Maggie just laughed with her finger stuck in her nose. The next morning Maggie woke up with a small booger on her finger. What was she going to do, she thought. First she tried to wash it off. It would not come off. She had to hide it, she thought. When she ate breakfast, she hid her finger under the plate so no one would see it. When she was finished with breakfast, she ran up to her bedroom to change clothes for school. She got in the car, and Dad noticed she was wearing gloves. "Kind of warm for gloves, don't you think, honey?" Dad asked. "I just think they look cool," lied Maggie. She certainly didn't want Daddy to find out. "I have all day at school to get rid of the booger," thought Maggie. When Maggie got to class, the first thing her teacher said was, "Please remove your gloves, Maggie. It's writing time." Maggie removed her gloves and looked at her finger. "Oh no," she thought. "It's getting bigger. What am I going to do?" "What's that stuff on your finger?" asked Maggie's friend Julian. "Nothing," Maggie said. "Oh," said Julian. "It looks like a booger." "If you must know, it's a mole," said Maggie. Snack time didn't come fast enough. "Wash your hands for snack time, children," said Maggie's teacher. Maggie beat everybody to the sink. She scrubbed and scrubbed, and it still didn't come off. In fact, it looked bigger than before. Maggie ate her snack alone. She didn't want her friends to see the booger. The rest of the day she stayed by herself. The booger was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. She could not fit her hand in her glove any longer. Her teacher finally saw it. "What's wrong with your finger?" she asked. "I don't know," said Maggie. "Maybe you should go to the nurse's office," said her teacher. So off she went to the school nurse, Mrs. Patcher. "What seems to be the problem, Maggie?" said Mrs. Patcher. Maggie held out her hand. "Oh," said Mrs. Patcher, "I've seen this before. Have you been picking your nose in public, haven't you?" Maggie shook her head with tears in her eyes. "Will it ever go away?" Mrs. Patcher hugged Maggie. "Yes, of course, dear. But you have to promise not to pick your nose in public and use a tissue instead." "Okay," said Maggie as her nose started to run. Mrs. Patcher handed her a tissue. "I promise not to pick my nose in public anymore," said Maggie. Then she blew her nose. "Why, look at your finger. It's already gone," said Mrs. Patcher. Maggie was so happy she could not stop laughing. When school was out, Dad was there to pick her up. "How was school today?" asked Dad. "Did you learn anything new?" Yes, Dad, not to pick your nose in public." The end.